I'm going to try something different. Start out with a couple positive things. One is probably the best of all, and that's our 18th straight. Excited about that. I think there was a time this year when, even I questioned it a little bit, but we'll feel good about it, and then end of the season we'll maybe celebrate it. But we're heading to North Carolina, no different than any other year, probably for the past 15 years, and that's to try to win the tournament, win the weekend, instead of winning a game like it used to be in my first couple of years here. I think we're going in about as good as we can go in. We've won 8 out of 11. We've won 4 out of 5. And all 5 teams we played, our NCAA tournament teams, we talk about what we didn't do this year, and yet we lost to 3 teams that aren't in the tournament. And so I think we've been kind of consistently, a little bit inconsistent, but consistently pretty consistent when you think about what's gone on. It's the time of year when everybody starts 0-0, as I told my team yesterday. And I don't know which way I want that to be, because I still think there's been some good wins and some good play, but there's been some discouragement too. And, the free throw shooting woes are at least a little bit in the rearview mirror. We've done a better job recently. I think, as I tell our guys, we got to play better, harder, and smarter. And we've been playing better. We've been playing harder. And once in a while, we're not playing smarter. And that's kind of the next step that we have to take. We have to play a little smarter. We've definitely played a level of basketball that, and when you get in that Big Ten tournament, if there's one major plus, it's understanding what one and done is, and a mistake means you're out. And I thought we rose to the level as about as good as any team I've had, because we had to play 3 very good teams last year. I think we played Northwestern, and then it was Wisconsin and Michigan. This year to play Ohio State, Maryland, and Wisconsin. I think we had to prepare, and especially that Saturday game, in a very, very short period of time, and to play 125 minutes in 44, 45 hours, I think gets you ready for NCAA play. We've faced some adversity. We've shown to be resilient. We've had our backs against the wall when we were 13 or 14-7. I think we've shown that we can handle that. So this team has been through a lot. And as I told you last week, one NBA guy said to me, after that Indiana game, we've kind of covered all the things that can happen in a game in the last 15 seconds. Well, then you add this weekend's game, and we've definitely gone through all the situational stuff you could go through. Only instead of thinking about them, we lived them live, and excelled in a few, failed in a few, hopefully learned from them all. And that's kind of what I'm looking to do. As far as Georgia, probably the hardest thing for me is I have a nephew on that staff who played there as a walk-on and then earned a scholarship, and has been on the staff for 3 years. Thanksgiving will never be the same. My poor parents, but I'm excited to play them. I think it's a very well-coached team. This guy can coach. Mark has done a great job when he was at Nevada, and he's done a great job there. He's battled through some injuries. He's battled through a couple players that left early by surprise, and through all the injuries this year. The only hard part about scouting them is this guy only played in 7 games. This guy only played in 8 games. So not knowing as much about them, it's hard to say where they were in the depth chart. They played Kentucky to 2 close games. Everybody knows they had a 7-point lead with 5-6 minutes left, 7 minutes left, whatever it was, just a couple weeks ago. So they've shown that they can play. They're a very good defensive team. They run a very kind of patterned offense with a lot of wrinkles in it. they get to the foul line a ton. They got two guys inside that can drive the ball and get to the foul line a lot. They have a point guard that's kind of like a mellow Tremble. Doesn't shoot as well from the perimeter, but draws a lot of fouls. And they're one of the better defensive teams. I think they're second in field goal percentage, third in three-point field goal percentage. So kind of a lot like us in that respect. So when you get a good team that's got some veterans on it, when you get a very, very, very good coach who's done an incredible job through the last couple of years there under the circumstances he's been placed in, we got our hands full with the opener. There's no question about it. Some people thought if they didn't get those injuries, I think they were upset late in the year by Auburn and South Carolina. They would have been a higher seed too. So I'll open it up for some questions and we'll have some fun.
Tom, you said on Sunday you're worried about a little bit of a hangover just with how emotional that Wisconsin loss was. Wondering how they've kind of responded since then.
I think we had it. It was yesterday and it's over. I think we had it. As I say, there's different things you go through in seasons, but I think everybody's been pretty upfront and honest about it, including me, that this is probably not a vintage Michigan State team. Wasn't as tough for a while. We've improved on that enormously since the Illinois game. Wasn't quite as talented as some. With some of the guys we lost, from August till now, just one or two guys can make a big difference on that. And we've been through those free throw, problems. And to me, to have a chance to win that game and win that game would have been one of the more enjoyable banners as I walk out into the court every night for practice. That would have been hanging in the building. At the same time, we didn't get the job done, and we're going to have to learn from that and figure out. I know why. I think everybody knows there were some different things down the stretch, some that were easy to see, some that weren't as easy to see that we should have taken care of. There was some defensive lapses. I think fatigue set in a little bit, and we did not get the job done. So I think the way home, meeting after we got home that night, yesterday we just had a walkthrough and a little film session. I knew the players needed a rest, and so we talked about it. We talked openly about it, and then I had a little meeting with my three amigos last night when I got back from a recruiting trip, and I think everybody cleared the air. I know I feel better about it, and I think they do too. So yeah, there was a hangover for a day, which I say happens once in a great while. For players, believe it or not, it doesn't happen as much as it does for coaches. They're more resilient than we are. But by last night, I think it was over for everybody, and we're ready to move forward. I'm thankful that we play on Friday. I think that helps us both from a fatigue standpoint and from an emotional standpoint. So ready to go today, and there'll be no more hangovers.
Tom, what have you seen in the evolution of Travis Trice? Is it both on the court, rounding out his game, and off the court leadership-wise?
Well, Travis had an incredible spring, summer, and fall. Incredible. He was healthy. He was definitely. Him and Denzel are the leaders, but I think Trav even took that more. I'd call him when I was on the road at recruiting, and he'd be taking the guys to a movie. They'd be going here. They'd be going out to eat. Just the things that every coach hopes for with a leader. But I think his health was the big thing. He had spent 2 summers where he never was healthy. One where he did nothing but lay in bed. So when I saw him we started working out a little harder in September. He was a different player then. He was making shots. He was doing this. Then he had a great start to the season. Then he went through a little tough time himself and struggled a little bit. Then we moved Tom in there, and I think we struggled a little bit because we just wore him down. He had to play so many minutes. There was no Elvin Ellis even available for minutes. There was no Javon Bess even for minutes. Brandon Dawson was out. Bryn Forbes had the broken hand, and it was like Trice and Valentine playing a ton of minutes. Valentine's body's a little more capable of handling that. I thought we wore Trice right down to nothing. And taking him off the point a little bit helped because he didn't have to guard the guy. He didn't have to bring the ball up. It gave him a chance to get a little more rest, and I think it gave him a chance to come off some screens and be a better shooter. I think in the last 8-9 games, Matt, tell me, isn't he averaging 18, 19 a game? But he's also been better defensively. He's better on the pick and rolls. He's starting to head north and south instead of east and west like I thought he was doing there for a while early in the Big Ten. I think he's got his free throw thing under control now. He even missed some of those, but he's a very good free throw shooter. And he's just been fun to coach. He's been fun to watch a guy who a lot of people said wasn't good enough to play here. If he didn't have those summers, or if I'd have been smart enough to redshirt him, who knows what he would have ended up. But as it is, the way it is, I still think he's got a chance. He's over 1,000-point scorer now. He's got a chance to still do some pretty neat things here and be a part. And that's what I was hoping the other night. Him and BJ could have won their third Big Ten tournament. Do something. I always like guys to leave here with something that's more than just a memory maker. It's something that other people haven't done. Well, I think Trav, because of maybe not getting over-recruited, because of his size, because of his girth, everybody always wanted to see what he couldn't do. And I think he's the all-American dream of this is what he wanted to do, this is what he's becoming. It's a great story.
Tom, is this one of your more in-season development teams when you look at where it was at the beginning and what even Matt Costello's done, Marvin Clark, Tum Nair, and it wasn't as ready-made maybe?
Yeah, it wasn't, and we didn't have as many. We had the three guys and a little bit. Costello had played some minutes, but after that, we just did not have a little. Losing Kaminsky was a guy that played a lot at the end of last year, especially when we lost, Payne and Dawson for that 9-game stretch or whatever. So we're a little more inexperienced, and then getting Forbes was great, but then when he broke the hand, it just created so many different obstacles for us that we didn't get a chance to grow, and we didn't get a chance to grow as much over Christmas. BJ was out with the broken hand then or whatever, and Alvin Ellis had just come back, and Javon Best was going back and forth. There was a lot of teasing in there. That wasn't their fault. So it was one of the more difficult to try to figure out where we were. I kept coming into these press conferences, or even at night, and I'd be saying to all of you, I don't know where this team's at. That wasn't because I'm stupid, although could be used. I know Fred, you used that about me a few times, but it wasn't that I was. It was just that I really didn't have a good feel. So I'd say that to answer your question, there has been some improvement. Tum Tum's improved a lot. Marvin is starting to improve a lot. Matt is improving a lot. We think Gavin has gone down a little bit, and we're looking for him to step back up. I think Travis has improved a lot in this second half of the year. So we're making some progress. It's just been a little slower, and it's been jagged. It hasn't been smooth because of the different injuries that we had to deal with ourselves.
A couple personnel questions on Georgia. Just how important is Gaines being healthy for them? I know he has a sprained foot. How different are they with or without him at full speed? And then Thornton, is he reminiscent at all of Dawson?
Well, he's a little different. He can score. What I've seen of him, he's a little bigger, and he can put it on the floor, and he goes right to the rack. But one thing he has a right and a left hand. I watched 3 films before I realized that he was right-handed, and he shoots more with his left. So he is, and they're both very strong. Dursic, those guys inside. But Gaines is, I think, their best perimeter shooter, and a very solid guard, athletic, good strength, good size, good build, I think he's going to be a load in himself.
I want to ask you about Costello a little more. Early in the year, even in last year's especially, he'd get the ball in the post and it looked like a hot potato. He was looking to get rid of it. Looks very confident now. Scored over Kaminsky a couple times. Just where has that come from, and can you kind of explain that evolution?
Well, I think my staff has spent a lot of time with him on his post moves. I mean, Matt, I think, spent a lot of time on his jump shot. And I said early in the year when I was disappointed in some things, I think he spent too much time trying to be Adrian Payne instead of being Matt Costello. Now he can shoot the ball. But, his bread and butter, he's actually got a good left-hand hook, too, that we don't see enough. But in fairness to him and in fairness to us, his progress has been a little slow at times because of the time maybe that he needed to put in. But I think he's really gotten to the point like a Drew Namack where basketball is become something that he really, really enjoys. And he's put more time in. We're more comfortable going to him, and he's more comfortable when he gets it. And that's always critical. Everybody wants the ball, but, we have to have confidence they're going to do something with it too. And right now, as you saw in that game, we went to him with Kaminsky on him late, and Matt hurt his knee a little bit and was slowed during the weekend, and he got pretty tired at the end, or I think we would have gone to him even a little more.
Coach, Nemanja Juricic is a little more of a Frank Kaminsky, can play it inside and outside. Mark Thornton, a little more of a interior presence. Have you had any thoughts about who you're going to have Brandon Dawson, your more versatile defender, on?
We haven't. We're going to decide that by tonight, but we do some switching anyway. They're definitely going to be two guys that they're similar in some ways and they're completely different. Juricic, I've never seen a guy with more pump fakes or, a typical European player. He kind of reminds me of a stronger Goran Suton. Shoots it maybe a little better from the perimeter. But he's got all the moves, left hand, right hand. Excuse me. He can, he's got these step moves and covers a lot of ground. So, I've been impressed with their team. I guess the best word to use with all those guys, they're very solid and they do what they do, and they have turned it over a little bit more, but they, as I said, get to the free throw line more, and part of it is those inside guys drawing fouls.
This will be MSU's 18th year in a row in this tournament. What are you looking forward to?
Well, a month ago I was looking forward to getting in it. Now I'm looking forward to winning a couple games. That's the truth of it. I think I like that kind of pressure that, I think our program is at the level where, you do got to go down there to win 2 games. And you got to do it one at a time. But, we'll be preparing that way. And I'm excited because I think our team's playing, some of the best basketball it's played. I still know our limitations. As I said, we're not a vintage Michigan State team, but it's been kind of exciting because being a little different, we can do it in different ways. We can score points a little easier. We can shoot the 3 a little better. I think Travis, played great in that tournament, even though his last game he only got 6 points. Give Wisconsin credit. They did a heck of a job on him. They put one guy on him and almost boxed and won him. And so we've kind of learned. That's where we went to Costello a little more. We went to Dawson on the post a little bit more. We ran some things that we could curl Valentine a little bit more. So we're learning too. We're learning how to play with Tom and what he can do. So I'm looking forward to just continuing the process. We were close. We were close the other day on doing what we want to do here, and that's hang a banner. We got beat by Kansas to win a tournament in Orlando, a game that went right down to the wire. We got beat by Wisconsin to try to win a tournament, a championship in Chicago, and we get one more shot and see where that takes us.
Tom, as much as parity is a part of, little guy here, much as parity is a part of college basketball now, can you remember a tournament? I mean, anyone who fills out a bracket and doesn't pick Kentucky is doing it just to be different. Can you remember a tournament where you had Secretariat here and all the other horses behind it like this?
That's a good way to put it. No, I don't. You know, in '09 when we played North Carolina, I think most people were picking them, but not like this. They weren't landslide picking them. And watching a little bit of Kentucky the other day, you know, you can see why. They've learned to play together now. They've gotten better as a team. But it is the NCAA tournament, you know, and March brings some funny things, you know, positively or negatively. And I just think that I've never seen a team this deep as Kentucky is, and really deep in experience for them, because they've got that class that was there last year and has been through it. So it's not like they have guys that haven't been through some of it, and that helps too. So, yeah, I've never seen anything like it, ever.
Tom, going into the Big Ten tournament, you talked about telling Brandon, you know, to play like he did in last year's. And aside from maybe the first few minutes, I think it was a Maryland game, maybe some of that first half, it seemed like he had that energy again. Is he where you need to be to put together this sort of run at this
I thought at the end of the game he, you know, floated a little bit too. And but boy, 90% of that Wisconsin game, he did some things he didn't even do last year. I mean, you know, just kind of rising up over people and, you know, making all his free throws, or a lot of them in that tournament. I think he is getting, you know, if he plays with that energy, we are a different team. And that puts a lot on Brandon, but he should be willing to take on a lot now when you're a senior. But there's no question we need the three of them, you know, Valentine, Trice, and Dawson, to be at another level. But most of the teams that are playing in this tournament, other than probably Kentucky, need the same thing. You know, they need their best players to play well. They need their role players to play their roles. And, you know, then you got to get lucky. Good whistle, stay injury-free, all those kind of things that happen in the tournament.
Regarding free throws, what do you think has been the thing that's pulled you out of it? Is it technique changes? Is it how you're teaching it? Is it mental? Is it what?
No, I mean, Travis Trice has shot free throws since he was 4 years old. It got to be somewhat mental that you know, collectively grew with your team. You know, it's like in baseball, you hear those rumors about, you know, if you're striking out, now more guys are striking out. You know, it's just the way it works. I mean, it becomes contagious. I think we went through a little bit of that, and we tried to remedy it by spending more time. We adjusted a few guys' techniques, you know, trying to do a few things with Brandon that helped him, tried to do a few things with Schilling, which is still a work in progress. But the other guys, it was just, you know, repetition, get more of them in. And, you know, that's what's so hard to figure out, too. You know, could we have won definitely 3-4 games shooting 65%? I think that's pretty evident, and I think we all agree that that would have been that way. And so somehow I'm trying to use that as a positive, because it screws me up too as far as where this team's at, you know, what you win by. I mean, we've won a lot of games against some good people, you know, and now's the time to put the free throw thing, have it work to your advantage, and also, you know, play better in all aspects, though. We got a little slack there when we gave up a couple of threes and a couple of driving three-point plays in that last game. There's a lot to work on today that we're going to work on and see now if we can take this thing to, okay, now the last 5 minutes of these games, let's see what we can do defensively, because that's really where we lost the last game. It wasn't offensively, it was defensively.
Tom, you talked about having been through every sort of late game situation possible, and I know that there have been situations when you've been up by 3, you've fouled, you've not fouled. It seems it hasn't been easy no matter what you decided to do. Do you sort of take it game by game still as to how you handle that, or sort of what goes into
Number one, I wouldn't give it away if you want the truth. But number two, I sort of do. I mean, when the season's over, I'll be able to explain to you why I did what I did. And I think it'll make more sense. I can't do it now. Not that it's any real big secret, but it just, my Twitter commercial, there's too much Twitter. I don't want players feeling this and that. So definitely there were some reasons, and they were good reasons. And I think you will understand them, but that's the hard part of the job. You know, you got to make some tough decisions, and if put it this way, if I had a 75% free throw shooting team like I've had often, I would have done things a lot differently at the end. And I can go into game by game when the year's over and kind of show you what I mean by that.
Is it to the point where you have to scout what other teams do in that situation too? Like, are they going to foul us if we're down 3, or are they going to play? I mean, do you try to prepare for it in that way? Or?
You know, I don't worry as much about that. I really don't. You know, I've seen teams do it different ways because I think there's a lot of coaches that are the same as myself. I'm not sure anybody is exact science on what they're going to do on it. Now, there might be a few, but some of it depends on who's reffing the game. You know, are you going to go up to shoot it, and then, you know, you could have looked at ours at Indiana. Was it a foul almost a shot? You could have looked at ours the other night when Denzel got fouled intentionally going in for a layup. And what was that? You know, you just sitting behind a computer, on radio, on TV, you guys got a lot of problems. You don't have those officials. You know, you got a lot of problems, but you don't have those guys. And theirs where the exact science isn't, and that's what, you know, makes you. At Indiana, we were trying to foul with 7 seconds left, and twice, and informed them, and then with 4.5 or whatever they, you know, did with. So it's. I wish it was as easy as you think, as some of these experts that call in or talk to you or tweet or write. It's not. And then we had a couple other issues that made it way more difficult to make those kind of decisions on when you foul. You know, if I was a 75% shooter, I might do it at 8 or 9 seconds. If you're shooting 50 in a game, you might do it with 3 or 4 seconds. When you do that, now you got to worry about how they're going to call it if it's on the shot. And it'll be a fun end of the year conversation where we get pizza and beer and have a hell of a party. I'll tell you the whole story.
Tom,
pizza and water. I got to make sure I work for an institution here. I got to figure out pizza and water.
You had made a comment in January that you've had a lot of teams that have kind of used the Final Four as a battle cry throughout the year.
Yeah.
You didn't want this team really doing that.
No.
Has that changed at this point?
No, it hasn't changed yet. I think the battle cry is to win the weekend. You know, battle cry is to win the weekend, and then we'll assess where we are. You know, there's been so much thrown at this team. I mean, not by anybody except ourselves. You know, I mean, it just. I mean, there are things that have been confusing to them. You know, it's been good because it's taught me a lot. I've learned a lot this year. I really have. And you'd think by this time I've had every base covered. I've learned a lot. But if all the years that I've been here, I still think I've got a team that cares about each other as much as any I've had, spends more time with each other as much as any I've had. So there are a lot of positives to that, you know. Sometimes, you know, I think it's taken till this weekend to see how much every guy cares. You know, sometimes it's harder to read with different people. And that's one thing I did learn with the loss. You know, I watch guys that surprise me. That's a good thing, if they learn from it. If they don't learn from it, it's a waste of time. And I think we'll learn from it. I really do. Now, that being said, we're probably not the same talent level team that we've had here in recent years. And so what that does is it makes it more frustrating for me, harder on them, frustrating for you, that we don't get to make many of the little mistakes. You know, there's just, you always hear this in sports, the margin for error is very slim. With us, it's paper thin. And yet we've learned how to live with that. And I don't think that's pressure. I think that's a goal to try to be mentally and physically better on each and every play. You know, Doug Herner, my old man up there, has got that little poem that everybody's probably seen, It's Only One Possession. And if you haven't, you should look it up, because we handed it out to our team Monday. And it's just kind of the way this team has to be. And if that means in some people's eyes, well, you're putting too much pressure on them, you know, every play they got to be thinking, well, if you want to win a championship, if you want to advance deep in a tournament, if you want to win the Big Ten championship, hey, that's what you got to do. That's why there's only one champion. You know, I mean, it's pretty simple to me, but I think for some people it's very difficult to figure out.
Two Big Ten teams have early collisions potentially with Kentucky. What would it take for a team like Purdue or a Maryland to beat them? You've seen those. Is it possible?
Well, the funny thing about Purdue and Maryland, they both have two things, I think, that would give them a puncher's chance. Size and depth. I think you're going to need size, and I think you're going to need depth. You know, I love Wisconsin. I do worry about their depth as this tournament goes on, you know. They played that way all year. They don't get in foul trouble very often, but you get in the NCAA tournament, different officials, different this, that. You don't know. I think definitely Maryland has a lot of depth. And in Kentucky, they have the two real big guys. Then they get a little smaller after that, but they got some tough kids. Like Raphael Davis can cover a guy 6'8", no problem. So I think they both have those kind of ingredients. I think Purdue's the toughest of the two. I think Maryland might be the more talented of the two. Maryland's got a little more size on the perimeter, but they do have size inside, and they're both 10 players deep that they can rotate. So that would be something interesting when you asked. Makes me think that would give them a chance.
Tom, at the Big Ten tournament, I had a Big Ten coach I was just talking with mention that when they get the officials, who the officials are, it does change a little bit how they go into each game. Going into an NCAA tournament where maybe you haven't seen everybody, how much does that change with you once you know who's officiating your game? And secondly, he talked about back in the day you prepared for your opponent, and now because of how things are, you have to prepare for the officials too, and just an added pressure on coaching.
You know, we find out 2 weeks ahead of time who the officials are in the regular season. I used to look, worry, think, out-coach myself. Now I don't even want to know until I walk on the floor. Nothing against the officials. There is so much inconsistency, and it's so hard. You know, I was talking to one official that did tell me, I should know this because I was here, but 20-some years ago they did have crews like football. I mean, I don't know if that's feasible. I just think it's hard on them. Forget what it is on us. You know, if there's somebody that I really know calls this or that, I might bring it up to the team, but I don't want them thinking about officials. And personally, I don't want to think about them. I think sometimes a guy knows that. What are you going to do? Tell him you can hand check twice. You know, then you start overthinking the game. And I've had a couple of times in the NCAA tournament, not that many years ago, where I might have let that get to me too much, and hopefully I've grown out of that stage, because that it goes back to the old line. You control what you can control, and you sure as hell can't control that. And I think if anybody thinks they can because they know a guy, maybe that one guy calls it one way, but the other guy might call it a different way. It's difficult. No crews, I think, makes it difficult in basketball. in the NCAA. In pro ball, it's different because the game is always the same and the same teams are playing. College ball, different conferences, different levels. It's very difficult for an official. So sticking up for them, it's not an easy job, but it makes it harder when you are sitting there. And I try not to worry about it. I try not to look. I just close my eyes when somebody shows me who's officiating. I'll find out when I get on the court.
You mentioned seeing some things from people you hadn't seen. I assume, at least in part, you're talking about Brandon's emotion late in that game. My question is, these huddles, after so many games, you talk about things you see in the huddle. What does that time mean to you, those huddle times? It's almost like it's character test time.
They're almost sacred times. I think I text Coach D the other day before the game. I don't do that a lot. I sometimes when I'm sitting there by myself while the team's out warming up early, I'll try to hit a couple of recruits or a coach. And I said something. He said, locker room time is most sacred, fun time. And it is. The huddles to me over the years. This week it was pretty good because Denzel was telling me how they were covering Travis and what plays he thought would work, and Travis was agreeing with him. Those things are always worth $1 million to me because that means they're really engaged, And I told Denzel, I thought at the end of that game, coming into the overtime, he let what happened really get to him, and he wasn't the same in the huddle. So yeah, you learn a lot in those huddles. I guess that's one advantage with basketball over football. I can think of a lot of football over basketball, but when you have all those timeouts and TV timeouts, you can gauge your team a little bit better. I don't know if that answers it. Give me another part.
Some of these coaches go talk with their assistants for a minute.
Yeah.
Every last second.
Sometimes, we're usually talking on the bench. It's kind of funny. Sometimes there's coaches that don't want to be in the huddle with them. Yeah, I like being in the huddle with them. I like somebody sweating on me. It's kind of good, and I enjoy that. So, but I do talk to my staff, and sometimes they're talking in the huddles, and it's a good question. I never really thought of it that way, but for the most part, most timeouts, until you get into these big TV games now, they're 1 minute and 30 seconds now, 1 minute for one and 30 seconds for the other. The 30-second one, it's hard to get your team over to them to be able to talk to them. The minute one, it goes quick. Now, when they're 2.5 minutes like they will here, hell, I might take my wife out to dinner and come back and coach the team. Okay. Some of those are long. They really are. We're sitting in there and, but I do think you can learn a lot in those huddles. You can really see a kid's eyes, and body language tells you a lot.
Tom, over here. Regardless of how the NCAA tournament winds up for you guys, when you look back on this and all the weird stuff that happened for this season and how you guys had to pick yourselves back up, were you thinking to yourself that, I became a better head coach because of all these things you experienced that you probably had not experienced before in the previous 20 years?
I hate to answer that question now, but I'm going to because you asked it. I think that's what bothered me so much about the weekend or the last game. I think I said it to you guys after. I can't remember. I was kind of brain dead after that game. But that banner, in my mind, would have been as significant as any banner hanging out there because of what you just said. And what you just said, because you know a lot and some of you know a lot, what I know is triple what you know. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean I know how many of those injuries. I know how hard it was to come back from them. I know that we weren't as talented in certain areas. I know what we went through. That one would have been one that if I would have walked out there for 10 more years and ever was questioning a team midway through the season on where we are, I could just glance up and say, oh, yeah, we still got a chance, and that's the way I looked at that. And somehow I'm going to try to use that anyway because, there was 125 minutes in the weekend, and I told my staff I thought we played about 110 minutes pretty damn good. I mean, really did. 3 days in a row, 1 day with 15 hours rest. And I'm going to try to use that even though we don't have the banner. But I will be a better coach. I mean, it's made me think about fouling a little bit more and not. And I came up with a conclusion on what I was going to do. But then I had to change it because of some other things that I know affect that. And but it'll help me. It'll help me in the off season. I think it'll help our staff. Free throw shooting is one area that you can control if you really spend some time on it in the summer. But yeah, I think I'll be a better coach for going through this season, and I think that's the great part of my job, Drew, is that they say the minute you're done learning, you better get out.
So follow up that. You're 60 now.
Yeah.
So you've been through this a lot, but you still learn something.
Oh yeah.
That perhaps
I learn
you may have
every
figured
day.
that at this you've been in this for so long. I'm done.
No, I think that's where you have problems. I think that's the $1 million statement. When you get either egotistical, I mean, as we get older, we get more stubborn. That's why last night I was on the road recruiting. I came back. I called my 3, amigos, superstars, or stooges. It depends which time I'm looking at them, and we just kind of sat in a video room up there for an hour and kind of talked as people that are trying to do something special this week, not as a coach and a player. It was talking with them instead of either down to them or, my case, up to them more often than not. Yeah, partnership, very good. And I haven't had to do that for a few years, and so it was good. I left there feeling good. It kind of got me over the hangover that took a little longer than normal, and today's been a good day. And hopefully we can grow from it.
Tom, I just wanted to ask you quick about the Mayton kid for Georgia that you guys recruited a little bit late. Have you seen what you would expect? Has he had
even better than I expected? Yeah, he's done a nice job for him. I think Mark has done a good job with him, and I think he's done a good job. I think he's grown a little bit, but he's going to be a very good player there. I really like him. He's playing, I think, 17, 18 minutes a game now. Like I said, they've had some strange things, too, with injuries throughout the year. I'm just trying to get a grasp on who were their main guys, who were their subs as far as injured guys. It's been a little different scouting them, too, by the way, because that conference, you watch them against Kentucky. That's hard to watch a team against Kentucky because you're going to do different things for survival. And then you watch them against maybe Auburn, who's pressing all the time, and this team who's zoning all the time. Unlike the Big Ten, it seems like there's so many different defenses and things. It's been a little more challenging to get a feel for them, but it's been really good. And like I said, it's fun to play teams that you have great respect for their coach and their program, and I'm looking forward to it. If we can find a way to win, we get a rematch of last year's, maybe, if Virginia gets by, and if we don't, then I'm going to have to address the season in probably the way you just said. There's been so many positives. It's just been a difficult year to coach because of all the things we went through. But the rewards of that and seeing a team grow and seeing some players, as you guys have mentioned, grow and take on things that I didn't know if they were capable of taking on has been fun, too. It's been fun. It's been rewarding, and I'd just like to cap it off by seeing if we can make a run in this tournament. So if there's I don't know if there's anybody else. Somebody raised their hand way back there or not. We're just not having a round table because I got a million things today. So if is anything else, I'd be glad to. mean, the first one that went up was, we were 4-3 at the beginning of the year, and the first championship Big Ten banner was special for that reason. And the Final Four banner, which was a surprise one, the first one, was the 05 one was a little bit, but this was I think different in a lot of ways. And plus, we were playing the best Wisconsin team ever. And we had just come off Ohio State and Maryland. I mean, the road there was kind of like the road to the Final Four in 05 when we had to go through Duke and Kentucky, So that was the only reason. I don't know if there's any other. I love every banner that's hanging. I just want more of them. But you kind of learn from each one. This one, I just thought, I learned from one that's not hanging last year, that's hanging in somebody else's building. UConn was a 7 seed that knocked us off and just kind of trotted their way right to a national championship. So I try to figure out any way I can learn. I learned from our football team. I learned from a lot of things. But I think, Drew, your comment, I know this. I'm not polished. I'm not a finished product yet. And I am still learning. And I think sometimes we're afraid to admit that. We're supposed to know everything. I don't. And when you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds, I sure as hell don't. And there's different things that come up with each one of them that you got to face. Family matters, girlfriend matters, this matters, that matters. It's amazing the different things you go through in a season. And but the more you go through it, the more experience you have, the better it is. So hopefully we're going to play well for you all and us all and everybody, and see if we can come back and do this again next week.